Yo, what's up, guys? The Insane Game Freak here. So, I initially started this out as a rant, but after doing some more research, I've come to the realization that I'm not. We shouldn't be as angry as we are, but I did want to address some things and kind of approach it from both sides. So, for those who don't have not heard the news, they announced the release date for the localization of Dragon Quest XI. Dragon Quest XI is coming out in the States in September of this year for the PS4 and PC versions. They're not localizing the 3DS version, and the Nintendo Switch version is coming much later. And for a while, I'll be honest with you, I was pretty mad up until I started looking into it more, especially when I came to the realization that even the 3DS titles that we got last year, Square Enix didn't even publish in the States. It was Nintendo are the ones who pushed for the localization and the sale of those two remakes in Europe and the United States. And granted, Square Enix has a bad track record of doing a lot of stupid shit. That's just Square Enix in a nutshell. They do a lot of stupid shit. And it was, part of me wasn't really that mad about the whole Nintendo Switch version being delayed, because from what I read up on, the original game, Dragon Quest XI, originally started development in 2013, which was about 4 years before the console came out, and probably like 2 or 3 years before they even got dev kits for the console. So, and obviously they wanted to focus on finishing the PS4 and 3DS versions first, because the PS4 had just came out that year, and the 3DS had been out for 2 years. So it makes sense why those two were the priority, especially because those are the two that were making the most money. But my frustration was more based around the fact that, okay, fine, I can kind of let go of the delay of the Switch version to a degree, but why not localize the 3DS version? I'm like, what is this shit? They localized the other two games, and then that's when I realized Nintendo are the ones who pushed those other two games, the other two 3DS games. It was like, well, fuck, you're still doing a localization for it. Why not put the game out, since you already have to do a localization for the PS4 and PC versions? You already have to localize the game, so what big of a deal would it be? And I still agree, I still believe that this is stupid. That why not put it out? It wouldn't hurt anything. Well, looking up the sales and other information on the other Dragon Quest games that came out, it's kind of clear to see why Square wouldn't have put this game out, and this is the counter argument I have. I understand it, because I'm starting to understand why Square didn't even look. Because I'm like, okay, so you're not localizing the newest game in the franchise, and you didn't even want to localize the two remakes, the two most popular remakes. And then I looked at the sales on VG charts, and I understand VG charts isn't 100% accurate, but the older the game is, the better accurate representation you get for the game. So I went ahead and looked, and I noticed one thing that's consistent no matter what console Dragon Quest was on. Dragon Quest doesn't sell that well in the US, nor in Europe. Most of Dragon Quest's sales come from Japan. And to be fair, a lot of us kind of knew that, but it's almost painful how bad the disparity is between the multiple countries. Like, for example, I think let's take Dragon Quest VIII, I'm pointing back here because I have it. Let's take Dragon Quest VIII, this game, right? This is one of the, to me, this from what I always heard from Dragon Quest Rants, this was like the most popular game in the series. I think I'm like maybe 50, 60 hours into this. This game in Japan, I think in total its sales are for the 3DS in all regions is like 1.13 million, which is pretty good for a 3DS remake, right? And then I'm like, well, how much of that is Japan? How much of that is Europe? How much of that is America? 8.88 million is just Japan by itself. So it almost sold a million in Japan alone. It sold like another 130,000 in America, and sold like 100,000 in Europe. These games don't sell that well in the other states for some fucking reason. Even looked up how well did the new game sell. Well, Dragon Quest, the best-selling version of Dragon Quest XI right now It's the 3DS version. The 3DS version has out. It's out. I think it from jump was outselling the PlayStation 4 version. The PlayStation 4 version has actually sold less, not by much, mind you. It's not like they're both like over 100, over a million. I think they're like a million, 1.1 million, 1.2 million, around that number. They're so fucking close, it's ridiculous. But the point I'm making is, both of those games are already million sellers just in Japan before they come out in the States. But when I looked at the US sales for not only the 3DS remakes, but just some of the older games, even the PlayStation 2 game, the original PlayStation 2 games, and the SNES games and shit, most of these games sell insanely well in Japan and don't sell for shit in America. So I guess that's part of the reason why Nintendo even had to localize the 3DS versions. Which means if we do get Dragon Quest XI for the 3DS, Nintendo's going to have to localize and publish it. And now it makes more sense why that was happening in the first place. These games don't sell in here, over here in Europe. So that's kind of the counter argument to why this is happening. I'm not that mad about. I'm kind of mad about the whole delay with Switch version. I expected the Switch version to come out later. Even Valkyria can't talk. Come on, English. We're gonna do this. We're gonna use our English to pronounce this Japanese word. I know it doesn't make sense, but goddamn it, we must try. Valkyrie. Can't do it. I can say Valkyrie, which is what Valkyria Chronicles is based off of. Fuck it. That wasn't even. You know the game. It's by Sega that isn't Sonic, and we're surprised it's still even getting pushed as a game. The point I'm fucking making is that game is delayed in Japan. In America, it's already come. I mean, not in America. In Japan, I think the PS4. I don't know if it had a Vita version, but I know the PS4 version of it is already out, and the Switch version doesn't come out until I believe this summer. So I'm not surprised that the game got a delay. It's not a huge issue for me, the game to get a delay. My concern, because the game isn't even out in Japan, Nintendo, it'd be a different story if the Nintendo Switch version was out in Japan. It's not. People gotta remember, Dragon Quest XI isn't out for the Nintendo Switch at all. It's not like a simple situation of, oh, it's just not out in America. No, the game isn't out at all. Now, granted, the localization should be already done, so it shouldn't be an issue of putting the game out on Switch. Putting the game out, localizing the game. That shouldn't be as much of an issue, because they can kind of do that jointly since they're already still working on the game. The issue comes in with the realization that, oh, wait a minute, Dragon Quest didn't sell that well in America. And I think people got to remember, put that in perspective. Because although Square Enix, and don't get it twisted, Square Enix has been bad. They will always be bad about game releases in the gap in between when a game is announced, when a game is in development, and when a game releases. Kingdom Hearts is a prime example. Final Fantasy 15, even Dragon Quest. Dragon Quest was in development for 4 fucking years before that game came out. And these are games that started in both, and I think Kingdom Hearts and Dragon Quest specifically were games that were kind of like mentioned and revealed around the time, or at least starting to be worked on around the time when the PlayStation 4 just came out. And we're not getting these games until 4 or 5 years into their lifespans. What kind of shit is that? So don't get it twisted. Square's always been bad with this kind of shit. But on the Dragon Quest situation, to be fair, they've had less time to work on the Switch version. They had the PS4 and 3DS versions to work on. And as far as the 3DS version not getting localized, although I agree you should still put it out, the reality is that those games don't sell well over here. Now, honestly, I don't think you can push a fan base by not releasing the games. And I'm hoping Nintendo pulls another Nintendo and decides to push the localization. It means they're going to have to foot the bill for another game that may not even sell well. Because I think, like I said, Dragon Quest 8 and Dragon Quest 7 remakes only sold maybe a little bit over 100,000 each. And those in Dragon Quest 8 specifically was viewed as one of the most revered games in the franchise. It's the one that everyone fucking talks about when you hear the term Dragon Quest. So it's like, Jesus, you couldn't even get that game to sell that well over here in the States. Now, 100,000 isn't terrible, but considering the game sold like 8 or 9 times that in fucking Japan alone, it looks pretty fucking bad when Japan is so lopsided. I think literally the only reason why they're still even making Dragon Quest games is because of how well it sells in Japan. Because they don't sell like shit in America. And granted, hey look, the PS4 version and the PC version might be the first time Dragon Quest sales really get kicked up, because I actually think that's because the PC version I don't even think was out in Japan. I think this is the PC version is like coming out in America the first time everywhere, essentially. The PC port is coming out everywhere this September. So hopefully the game does well. And to be fair, I mean, like I said, Dragon Quest 8, the 3DS remake was the first time I got into it. But looking at it from that perspective, although I'm still not happy about the situation, I can understand why it's an issue in the first place. Because the game was spent less time in development for the Switch. I'm not really mad about that. The games don't sell that well in America or Europe. Would you really want to invest that much effort into porting a franchise that doesn't even come close to even matching half of Japanese numbers? And if you look at the other titles in the franchise, it's the same thing. I don't think any Dragon Quest game in America alone has broken 1 million units. Like, I think the closest I saw was like 600,000 and maybe 800,000, maybe. And granted, that's nothing to scoff at, but it's like Japan usually doubles or triples whatever the fuck it's sold in America. Or in this case, it's like 8 or 9 times as much. To be fair, it's more like 7 or 8, but I like, exaggeration to make things seem crazier. So, although I'm mad about it and I'm annoyed, I understand what the situation is now better. And I'm glad I looked it up. I'm glad I started, because I actually had the Rant video started. So if you want to see that, let me know, and I'll put it as an unlisted video. So you guys can check out. There's nothing really special about it. But if you want to see me get angry for about 10 minutes, that's something to look forward to. But I just kind of want to address it to people so people kind of understand the situation. That Dragon Quest just doesn't sell that well in the other countries, and that's the reason why it's such a pain in the ass to get certain games localized. I think really the only reason why they're putting it out on the PS4 because the PS4 is an easy bet, and considering you can go from that and make a PC version, I'm surprised Square's even still trying to put that game out in other countries. It's not selling because honestly, the way especially the 3DS remakes sold in America, man. And considering what they might be putting out this year with it is going to be an issue. Because if they put out Kingdom Hearts and we got Smash and Pokemon and Metroid, I might still end up getting the game for the Switch. I might be busy this fucking holiday depending on what actually releases and what doesn't. But the point I'm making is Square Enix has its issues, but as far as Dragon Quest is concerned, you gotta at least understand where they're coming from. So, yeah. That's my thoughts. That's my opinions. Please leave yours in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate the love and support. This has been the Insane Game Freak. Life's a game, play to win, and I will catch you guys later. Peace. Oh!